Hey everybody, Steve Prziborowski here. Welcome to episode 10 of Reach for the Firefighter Badge. Your webinars, your webisodes, episodes, whatever you want to call them, to help you prepare for that firefighter badge. Episode 10 is going to discuss, you want to become a firefighter? Should you even think about becoming a paramedic? So, let's get started. As a reminder, my two websites, code3firetraining.com and chabotfire.com, have a lot of free stuff on the free stuff links, a lot of articles I've written, and links to other good, valuable information, whether you want to become a firefighter or whether you already are a firefighter and you want to prepare for promotion or just be the best you can be at whatever rank you are. Lots of good information on my websites there. These series of webinars are based on two of the three books that I've had published. Number one, the Future Firefighters Preparation Guide, and then number two, Reach for the Firefighter Badge. Both two separate books, but complementary as well. So lots of good information within both of those books. So I get asked this question a lot of, do I need to be a paramedic to be a firefighter? So the question really begs, why be a paramedic in the first place? I want to be a firefighter. I want to fight fire, save lives. Well, by now, hopefully you realize that the average firefighter does not grab someone from the clutches of death on a daily basis. The average firefighter might not even save a life directly during their entire career. I don't mean that disrespectfully, but depending on where you work, most firefighters save lives probably indirectly or directly by the actions of what they're doing, but again, not necessarily physically grabbing someone and making that grab of a lifetime, as they say. And again, the average firefighter doesn't fight fire every day, and some firefighters may go months between seeing fires. That's just the job. So why be a paramedic? Well, a lot of departments require you to be a paramedic just to apply. Now, a lot of departments just require EMT, the first level of pretty much medical certification. And across the country, most firefighters, if you look at any firehouse across the nation, knock on any door, of any career fire department, meaning paid, you're going to probably find those folks that are riding that fire engine, that fire truck, they're at least an EMT in most departments, and some of them may even be paramedics. So usually EMT and or paramedic are the two credentials that most firefighters are typically required to have. But if anything, EMT is more common than paramedic. So in some departments, if you want to work for that department, you got to be a paramedic. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So that's one thing. Another reason to become a paramedic, it drastically reduces your competition. I mean, drastically reduces competition significantly, not just drastically. I guess they're the same word, but anyway. When I was testing for firefighter, I remember having my EMT and my Firefighter One Academy. I mean, there was still hundreds, if not thousands of applicants I was competing with. But as soon as I got my paramedic, it went down to double digits, seriously. By the time I had my paramedic license, there was like double digits competitors. When I got hired by my current department, instead of thousands to compete with, there was like 60 of us going for 11 jobs. 60 for 11 jobs, I love those odds. I mean, obviously I was one of those 11 that got hired. That was in the early 90s. Even today in 2020, those are still about the same odds. They're not, I thought by now there'd be a lot more paramedics out there wanting to become firefighters, but they're not for some reason. So most departments, people I talk to around the country, they're struggling to get paramedics to apply for the fire department. Now, some departments will put you through paramedic school, like LA County Fire is known for that. If you're not a paramedic, as soon as you finish the recruit academy, and as soon as you finish your probationary period, you're usually drafted for paramedic school. Now, if you don't want to become a paramedic, probably don't work for LA County Fire, because you're going to realize that that's what happens. And it's not personal. It's just those that usually get off probation, depending on their needs, which is usually a lot of paramedics, they'll put you through their own paramedic school that you're required to complete to keep your job. So do your homework, know what you're getting into. It's not a bad gig. I mean, I'm glad I went to paramedic school for a number of reasons, but you don't have a lot of competition. It doesn't guarantee you a job by any means. You still got to do well in the written test, the oral interview, the chief's interview, the background investigation, the psychological evaluation. You still got to pass the academy. You still got to pass probation. So don't think it's your gold ticket in. It just drastically reduces your competition. Plus, most of our calls are EMS. Depending on the department that you want to work at, most departments, meaning 60%, 70%, 80% of the call volume is emergency medical service calls that usually require either BLS, basic life support, meaning EMT, or ALS, advanced life support, paramedic level care. So like in my department, every engine is staffed with either an EMT or a paramedic. So there's usually one paramedic assigned to every engine, truck, rescue, or hazmat unit, and the rest are EMTs. So there has to be one paramedic on board each day. There's also one paramedic on the county ambulance that'll respond with us. There's the 2 paramedics that'll treat the patients. So most of our calls are EMS in nature. So there's a reason why departments hire paramedics. Number one, because of the calls. Number two, it's expensive to put someone through paramedic school. Now, to get into paramedic school, you know, I encourage you to do your homework. I mean, you can Google paramedic school, how to get in, what are the requirements. But for the most part, to be a paramedic, it makes sense that you first have to be an EMT, because EMT is the stepping stone for paramedic. You know, EMT is about 100+ hours of training. So that's a lot in itself. Paramedic is about 1,000 hours. It takes it even to the higher level. But usually they require you to be an EMT. You may also be required to have field experience as an EMT on a vehicle responding to 911 calls. Now, I say vehicle responding to 911 calls. Some paramedic schools, and there's usually paramedic schools are usually held at held through colleges, community colleges, or they're held through private companies. Typically, it's usually private company or colleges that run paramedic programs. Private companies, there's no right or wrong to what type of school you go to, but sometimes private companies may be a little bit maybe less demanding on prerequisites versus a college, but don't think that's the right way to go depending on your circumstances. I say that because a lot of people look at a college and they say, well, the college requires me to have, you know, like when Chabot College used to have a paramedic program where I teach at and taught at the paramedic program. You know, one of the requirements was, besides being an EMT, you have to have had field experience on an ambulance or a fire engine running 911 calls. And a lot of paramedic school applicants didn't like that because they wanted the fast track. They go, I want to get through my EMT. I don't want to have to wait to find a job as an EMT, which can take a while, and then work as an EMT, and then go to paramedic school, or at least apply to hope to get in. That could be a year or more after I finish EMT school. I want to go right to EMT, right to paramedic, because that's going to guarantee me a fire job. Well, newsflash, there's no fast track to anything in life. And if there is, someone's selling you a bill of goods. It's a rarity that there's a fast track that actually works out well. Just like in the last episode, I talked about LeBron James. Yeah, LeBron James went from high school ball. He was a rock star basketball player in high school, and he went right to the big leagues. And he stayed in the big leagues for 15 years plus. I can't remember how long he's been playing basketball, and he's probably one of the top 10 basketball players ever. Love him or hate him, it doesn't matter. He's the exception to the rule. There's very few people that can do that. So the benefit, again, of having experience and having prerequisites is they're going to set you up for success in the future. But again, a lot of colleges do them because they're pretty much used to seeing students fail out, and we don't want to see students fail out. But then private schools may not require prerequisites because they just want your money and they want to get you in, get you out. But notice what I said, vehicle responding to 911 calls. It's number one, tough. You may think, well, become an EMT, it'll be easy to get a job on an ambulance. No, it's very competitive to get a job on an ambulance as an EMT. I mean, just looking where I'm at in San Jose, the San Francisco Bay Area, there's EMT programs. I mean, God, I can probably count within about an hour drive of San Jose, probably about 6, 7 EMT programs, maybe more. And each of them run usually two a year, meaning they graduate one class in May in the spring, and then they graduate one class in December. Well, some of these classes may have 15, 20, 30, 40 EMTs graduating. So in theory, in a major metropolitan area like where I'm at, there could be hundreds, if not thousands, of EMTs graduating every year from each of the local schools, or collectively from all the schools. And guess what? They're all probably applying for jobs on ambulance companies. So AMR, Rural Metro, Falk, Paramedics Plus, whatever the ambulance company is, they're usually getting inundated with applications. So they're able to pick and choose the best of the best. So don't think it's a slam dunk to get a job on an ambulance. Plus, most ambulances don't run 911 calls. Most ambulances do what is called interfacility transfers or transports, which is not a big deal or not a bad thing. It's still experience, but it's usually non-life-threatening emergencies. Don't get me wrong. It's good experience to have. It's better than nothing. And especially if it's for a company that also runs 911 calls, maybe it's a foot in the door for maybe you start out as the interfacility transport person, then you work your way to the 911 calls. But if it's a company that just does interfacility transfers, I mean, it's not 911 calls. The benefit of running a 911 call on an ambulance as an EMT is that you're in the thick of it. Just like on a fire engine, you're in the thick of it. So that's where the benefit is. I know it's hard to get that experience, and you may not be required to have that experience on the paramedic school that you choose, but just realize those are things to help benefit you in the long run. Paramedic school itself. Usually in most states, it's pretty much the same curriculum. It consists of some classroom time, which is considered didactic, it's called, but classroom time that could be a couple months in length. It could be 1 day a week or 2 days a week or Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. I went to a 2-day-a-week paramedic school. That was tough as it is, even with 5 days off throughout the week to study. 2 days a week was enough. My butt was kicked because I had to study every day because it was, I mean, paramedic school was tougher than college. I had already gone through 4 years of college, got my 4-year degree, and paramedic school was tougher than that. So I'm just giving you a frame of what to expect. It isn't easy. I mean, EMT isn't easy, but paramedic school is even tougher, as it should be. You're treating patients. You're the front line, first responder on a fire engine or ambulance taking care of people. You better have your act together. And then usually once you finish the classroom time, you then do some hospital clinical time. So you go to the hospital, spend a month or 2 in the hospital, assigned to a preceptor, working on patients. And again, a hospital is not necessarily the same as the field time. I mean, a hospital can be challenging, but the real challenge is then the next step, the field internship, which is usually 480 hours plus. And you go 480 hours, well, that's 24-hour shifts if you do the math. 24-hour shifts, no, 24-hour shifts. Thank God I'm a college graduate here, but yeah, 24 times 20 equals 480. Now I'm doubting myself, sorry. But anyway, you do field internship, which is going to be a couple months, typically on an ambulance running 911 calls. Fire engines do take interns, but most fire engines are, even with paramedics, are not that busy. If you want experience, ambulances are the way to go because they run usually more calls than fire engines, and they get more critical calls. Typically, nothing against fire departments, it's just the way it works. So that's usually paramedic school. It's usually going to be 1,000+ hours. Rarely you're going to, I mean, it's at least 6 months if you're lucky and everything goes right. Usually paramedic school is going to be upwards of a year, if not longer. It took me almost 1.5 years. My problem was finding a field internship because field internships can be hard to get because, again, depending on the number of students in your regional area, it can be tough. I talked about how challenging it is. There is no perfect school. There's, like I said, colleges that run paramedic programs, as are private schools. I went to a private school. I'm not saying it's better or worse. Private schools are usually obviously more expensive, and they usually have less prerequisites, good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, I spent upwards of $10,000 back in 1993 and 94 when I went through paramedic school. And yeah, it wasn't cheap. I had to save money. I had to owe my parents money after the fact. I had to move back home. I was working a full-time management position at Long's Drug Stores. I had to take a $20,000 a year pay cut. Yeah, I took a $20,000 a year pay cut, and you may think that's not a lot of money. It is, even today. But back then, when I was making $35,000 and I went from 35 to 15,000, that's a significant pay cut, especially having to move back home after I was living on my own. Not that I hated my parents, it just sucks to do that. But I also knew that my focus was becoming a firefighter, and if I wanted to be a firefighter, I needed to prepare for the position, and I needed to go in with some qualifications of what departments in the San Francisco Bay Area were looking for. And the writing was on the wall in the 90s that departments wanted not just EMT, but also paramedic, because paramedic was the big thing in the 90s. And even to this day, in 2020, it is still challenging for departments to hire paramedics. Most departments, at least in major metropolitan areas, are still looking for paramedics. The problem is there's just not a lot of them out there. They're just, I mean, for whatever reason, I mean, there's a lot of them that work for the private ambulance companies. For some reason, a lot of them don't want to work for the fire departments. I don't know why, or I don't know. So regardless, going to paramedic school can definitely help you become a better firefighter, because that's what we mostly do. Now, let me summarize and close with this. If you're only going to paramedic school to become a firefighter, think about that. I mean, a lot of people do that. Hey, fast track to become a firefighter. My odds go from thousands of competitors down to double digits. I got great odds now. If you're only going to paramedic school to become a firefighter, please do your future patients and coworkers that you work with on the fire department or the ambulance, because a lot of fire departments do have their own ambulance services, a favor and don't waste their time by applying to be a firefighter. Now, let that soak in. I mentioned earlier that part of your paramedic training is not just classroom time, not just clinical hospital time, but also field internship time. Usually the field internship is on a private ambulance because those are usually the busiest, usually in a big urban area. Now, when you go to your field internship and you've got to complete your 480 plus hours, if not more, guess what? The last thing you want to do is go to your preceptor. You're assigned a preceptor. So you'll be the third person on an ambulance typically. So most ambulances around the country are usually staffed with 2 people, and especially private ambulances. There's usually 1 EMT, 1 paramedic, maybe 2 paramedics, but usually 1 EMT, 1 paramedic. And that paramedic will be your preceptor, your evaluator, that person that's going to basically sign you off, saying that you're safe enough as a beginner to be out on your own as a licensed paramedic and go kill people. I mean, really, or not help them. So that preceptor is looking at you to make sure that you're not just a safe beginner. I mean, don't get me wrong, you got to be a safe beginner, but you got to hit the ground running and running hard. So the last thing you want to do is when you start getting to know your preceptor, I mean, again, you're going to be assigned to them for a couple months and they're watching you with binoculars under the microscope. If they know you're only doing it to become a firefighter, because I've heard that, oh yeah, I'm just going to paramedic school to become a firefighter. Your odds of success are probably going down by the moment because number one, you're not developing a good relationship with them, because chances are if they're working on a private ambulance, maybe they don't want to be a firefighter. There's many that work in private ambulance companies that don't want to be firefighters, and that's fine. It's not for everybody. Or maybe they're, I don't know what. But the thing is, usually folks on private ambulances, especially if they're serving as a preceptor, their main goal is to make sure that you're ready to rock and you're not just doing it to check the box, be half-ass, and just squeak by, and then do it to get hired and then drop your license. Because I've seen that happen where some people get hired in the fire department and then, hey, you know what? Thanks for hiring me. I'm done with the academy, done with probationary period, dropping my medic license. I'm going back to EMT status. Well, newsflash, most departments require you to sign an agreement when they hire you as a paramedic or they put you through paramedic school, which some departments are doing that because they need paramedics and they're willing to spend the money. But either way, if they hire you or put you through it, there's a chance they're going to make you sign a document that says you will keep that paramedic license maybe for 3 years, maybe for 5 years, maybe for your career, maybe until you promote. Because a lot of departments don't allow captains or chiefs to be paramedics. They just want the firefighter or maybe the engineer, the driver of the apparatus, to be a paramedic. In most departments, though, officers, lieutenants, captains are not paramedics. Not to say they can't be or shouldn't be. It's just usually the primary patient person is the firefighter. The engineer focuses on driving, the officer focuses on being the officer, and the firefighter, EMT, firefighter, paramedic is the one that focuses on patient care. I mean, good, bad, or different, that's usually how it works. So you've got to be willing to keep that paramedic license for potentially 5 years or even your whole career. And let's say you don't want to promote, because when I got promoted from firefighter to captain, I was no longer required to be a paramedic because, again, we require the firefighter, one of the firefighter positions, to be paramedic. Captain, I was still required to be an EMT, which I still had my EMT license, but I wasn't required to be a paramedic. To this day, I've been a chief since 2006. So 14 years I've been a chief officer, and I became a captain in 2001. I've kept my paramedic license the whole time. I've been a paramedic since 1995. I mean, I'm not practicing primary patient care. God forbid if a chief officer, if a deputy chief shows up and does patient care. I mean, I haven't started an IV in probably 15 years. The world's coming to an end if I show up as a chief and say, hey, let me start the IV. I mean, I have got plenty of awesome, qualified, trained, talented paramedics and EMTs on our fire apparatus that do that stuff. I keep up my paramedics. Number one, it took so much to get it. It was such a chore to get it. I don't want to give it up. And the only reason I can keep it is I don't have to keep it because my department doesn't require deputy chiefs to have EMT or paramedic because we're not in the field. We drive a desk, and that's okay. But I keep it up because I just want to show that commitment to it. And it's easy to keep up 48 hours of continuing education every 2 years. I mean, it's because once you give something up, it's hard to get it back. Not impossible, just hard. But again, The world's coming to an end if I'm starting an IV on somebody. So, hey, we'll leave it at that. But I say that, but on a serious note, do it because you want to be the best darn paramedic you can be. Because if you go to paramedic school with that positive attitude of, yeah, I do want to be a firefighter, don't hide it, but I want to be the best damn paramedic I can be. I mean, and be it passionate about it, enthusiastic about it, and sincere about it, because that's going to help you with your classroom time, your clinical time, your field internship time. And more importantly, when you go to your interview for the fire department, it's going to help you there too, because again, we don't want to hire people that just want to be the paramedic to check the box, get the job, and then say, hey, I've done my 5 years, done. We don't want that. I mean, then it's so tough to get paramedics as it is. So again, do it for the right reasons and it will show. Be sincere and it'll show. So again, as always, thank you very much for the gift of your time, everybody. My contact information, my social media locations, please feel free to reach out if I can ever be of assistance to you, or if you ever have any ideas for future episodes of Reach for the Firefighter Badge. So until next time, take care, be safe, and be well, everybody.